Welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, the journey of becoming a conscious man, hosted by Milvo. Hey all, Milvo here, and welcome to episode 33 of the Unearthed Man podcast. To kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we work and gather, and their continuing connection to land and waters. I pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I pay tribute to the diversity of First Nations peoples of Australia and their ongoing culture. I'd like to thank Frankie for his time last week and his willingness to share his journey from professional sportsperson to offering breathwork and healing sessions for his fellow brothers and sisters. I know that Frankie's now on an awesome journey, particularly with him and his wife, Tay. And again, I couldn't thank him enough for sharing his time last week. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, then welcome aboard. If you are one of my regular listeners, then welcome back. I appreciate your ongoing support. If you're looking to know more about the Unearthed Man, then you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I was extremely impressed when I met my next guest. In amongst a room of men who had many years of experience, this young man stood tall and showed us all what true courage looks like. When we think of future leaders and kings, then he is one of them. To make a decision to face into his traumas and past experiences at the age of 23 shows how switched on this young man is. He may not have seen it that way at the time. However, it takes a person with great self-awareness to rock up to a weekend session with 49 other men and openly discuss the challenges he has faced to be at that point. Post that weekend, he packed up his car and moved to the Sunshine Coast with less than $10 in his bank account, determined to change his life. I've witnessed his journey over the past couple of years, and without sounding condescending, I could not be prouder of him. It's like seeing your own son move from being a boy to a man. He now lives with what he calls a Mamba Mentality. I'm so looking forward to this chat. So without any further ado, welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, Corey McCarthy. Hey, brother.
Hey, Bella, thank you very much for that introduction. That touched me, man. Thank you very much.
That's right, mate. It's all very heartfelt. As I said in the introduction, just you were part of the group that I was in, the smaller group that we actually had at Unleash the Beast. And, I think there's about 8 of us in that group. There's yourself and another young lad, but definitely the way you guys showed up on that weekend gave us a really good example of what showing up looks like, particularly for some of us older guys who have probably hidden behind stories and traumas over many, many years. So first of all, my gratitude to you for doing that because you led the way. So on that point, do you want to talk a bit about how did you end up at Unleash? What drove you to be in a room of 49 other men to change your life?
That's a great question, Milvo. Yeah, that's a really great question. How I got to Unleash the Beast. I guess I was at a point in my life where I was just coming out of rehab a few months earlier, and I was at home living with my parents, and very much at the lowest of lows. And it was actually my ex-girlfriend at the time who literally just sent me the link for it. And I was looking to kind of step into masculinity as I was a very feminine man. And she literally sent me the link, and luckily enough, my birthday was coming up. So it was actually my parents that paid for the ticket. So thank you to mum and dad. Yep. And I drove up and had no idea what I was getting into, and it was a beautiful weekend. And yeah, as you said, it's a beautiful to be surrounded by a lot of men that choose to work through their challenges.
Look, absolutely. And I think you've probably touched on the point there is, your parents gave you help. One thing we don't do really well is asking for or even accepting or being grateful, because even if we get help, we feel we have this need to give back. They give me something, so I must do something in return, rather than just being grateful for the gift that was given to us. So, how did that sort of feel with you being in that situation of that gift?
It was very, as you said, it's like that challenge of like, I have to give something in return. It has to be a transaction, that old limiting belief. But, I was very grateful. At the same time, being a young man, my ego was through the roof and still is from time to time. So it was, accepting something from, mum and dad where I wanted to provide it for myself. So that provider thing got in there as well. But yeah, overall, very grateful and very blessed and glad that they were willing to pay for something that they personally weren't even aware of. So they just trusted my instinct and said, yeah, they were at a very, they came out of that rehab time in my life as well. So it was a troubling time for them as well. So they were very willing to support me in any way that I thought would support me as well. So they were very much on board, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's absolutely beautiful. And sometimes the way that we actually give back to others is just by turning up differently as a human being, as opposed to monetarily saying, I'll pay you back. It's actually about how you then, it's more, how am I now turning up as a human and show gratitude from a human aspect or a spiritual aspect, as opposed to, having that need to, I'll give you the money back. I'll pay it back for you.
Absolutely.
To be honest, that's sort of where my daughter sits, right? We've financially assisted her through some challenging times. And, I know she keeps saying she'll pay it back, but she's already paying me back now. And then she's living her best life in Cairns, working on an island, just enjoying life to the fullest. Like, there's my payback. No money in the world can pay back her journey and where I'm seeing her now. And I think that's, as a parent, I'm sure, not speaking on behalf of your parents, but I'm pretty sure they're watching your journey and they probably feel similar.
Thank you, Milbo. Thank you, mate. I really appreciate that. And it's a beautiful story about your daughter too.
So, rehab. Do you mind if we move back into that space?
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
So what does that journey, because we just don't come out of rehab. Something's obviously taken place for us to have to get there in the first place. So what does that look like? Do you mind stepping back into, the journey up to why, what you're taking, what you're on, and why, or what the rehab was all about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So it actually, my episode, it was in the Western medicine world. It was labeled as a psychotic episode, which lasted for about 3 months.
Okay.
And before I started showing signs of what the Western medicine world calls hypomania, I was in a relationship at the time, and my ex-girlfriend was sexually assaulted in that relationship, which brought up a lot, which was just a traumatic event, obviously, for her, and it was a challenging time for the both of us. And that eventually led to me just stonewalling and and then I started crying all the time, and then I'd be happy 5 minutes later and I'd be crying all the time, and then it'd be literally one end of the scale to the other end. That's how it all started. And when we eventually, it led to our relationship ending. That's when I really kind of went off the rails. So it looked like middle of the night road trips, a lot of prostitution, a lot of hooking up, a lot of chasing people, a lot of chasing girls that already had boyfriends, getting in fights with the boyfriends, and really, really poor decisions and really hypermate. I was sleeping 1 hour a night for about 3 months, and I was always active. Like there was not one time. It was like the way that I can describe it is just like being drunk for 3 months and having no repercussions for your actions. Like I thought I was untouchable.
Wow.
And and it eventually led to the stage where, obviously, through that time, I drew a lot of concern in from my loved ones. So I was living with my family, my mum and dad, and a lot of concern in from my friends as well, the way I was behaving. So then Dad did a little bit of research and started throwing around the term bipolar. And he was kind of like, he was very careful about the way he approached it, but he was essentially saying, do you think you have bipolar, and do you think you need some help?
Yep.
And, and to be quite transparent, my mentality at the time was like, fuck off, Dad. Like, fuck off. Like, I was so angry. I was like, let me live my life. Like, it it was pure just saw red. I was like, because in my perspective, I was having the time of my life. Like I was having so much fun. And so and eventually got to the point where Dad contacted, I don't even know how, but contacted health services. And one night I got home from Inverell from a bender, and I was actually going to get in my car to drive to Brisbane like 9 o'clock at night to go and see my ex-girlfriend, which was a good idea at the time. And I lost my keys, and I was like looking around on the front yard for my keys, and then the cops pulled up, and I'm like, oh, perfect, the police are here to help me look for my keys. And they got out and they started talking to me very calmly, and then I was like, oh, can you help me look for my keys? Because I was just completely oblivious.
Yep.
And then the ambulance rocked up, and there was paramedics and all the rest of it. And then eventually all brought me inside with Mum and Dad, and they all had to sit down, and they were asking me questions like about the last 3 months and my behavior. And I was just honest. I was like, this is what I've been doing. And then they brought me in to the hospital, kind of gave me more assessments there, and eventually was transferred into a psychiatric ward down in New South Wales.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how I got there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's wow. That's I'm not sure. I think you may have talked about parts of that on the weekend, but yeah, I'm not sure I've heard that full detail on that. It sounds intriguing because it feels like sometimes when people go through things, there's a lot of fear that sits underneath it, and there's a lot of that. But it felt like that you were sitting at the other end of the scale. Like there was no fear. There was this: I'm superhuman. I can just fuck it. I'm just living my life. Like get out of my fucking way. I'm taking on the world.
100%, Milo. 100%. Like I thought I was king of the world. Like I was having the time of my life. It was the first time in my life where I felt comfortable to sing and comfortable to rap, comfortable to dance. And I was like moving. I was always moving. I was always happy. I was always cheerful. I was connecting with people like I never was before. I was in a performance at the time in a stage show, and it was like the best I performed in my entire life. And when everyone was showing me that concern, like, you need help, I was like, why? Like, I'm so fucking happy.
It's a really interesting, just as you're talking through that, my mind, it's just in this space of, where's that line between someone living what they feel is their truest, just truest life of just living life to the fullest versus it's just an ego-driven cover up rush. So it's like, where is this playing into? Like, how much is that true self of going, fuck it, no, I'm like, I'm just out there having fun and fuck the rest of society versus my ego's tricking me into the fact that I'm Superman and I can go and I can bonk anything that I see, or I can just chase other blokes, women, and these sorts of things. So it's really interesting on that one, I feel.
Oh man, yeah, it's absolutely, and like speaking into that is like there was parts of me that knew what I was doing the whole entire time, and like people thought, just there was times where it was like, oh, he's psychotic, like he doesn't know what he's doing, but there was always like I knew what I was doing at the time, and like I was like, it was the part of me that was like genuinely like I feel like I'm being my true self, because like before this whole thing went down, like I was very shy, very people pleaser, polite, like was a bit of a doormat, like would let anyone and anyone walk over me. And this was the first time I was being assertive, I was being dominant, I was being masculine, I was being fun. I was like, I started having the most luck I've ever had in my life in every aspect. I was like, why is everyone freaking out? Like I've been, like a depressed sack of shit for 20 years. Like, and now I'm finally happy. Like, why is everyone trying to stop me? Like, but yeah, I didn't see it from a 40,000 foot view the way other people did, which is where like the divide started.
Okay, so let's talk into that, because again, some people go, yeah, fuck it, just like you're a people pleaser, you're suppressed, you're everything was sitting within you, you're feeling oppressed and suppressed, and you didn't feel like you could be the true you.
Yeah.
You then jump into this version of you that you feel is the true me. And then we take a further look, going, well, maybe that's still not the true me, or where is the true me sort of sit. So yeah, talk into to that 40,000 foot view that others were having. And do you agree, or are you in alignment with that 40,000 foot view, or where do you sit with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I for the 40,000 foot view, there's partially I agree. Like it was, I feel as though where a lot of the concern was driven from, like it was such an extreme jump. Had it been more subtle and over a longer period of time, I probably would have been like not drawn attention to myself. So there is genuine parts of me that even now that I'm still unraveling, where I want to be more free and more weird and more crazy, like and more just enjoying life and just a free spirit.
Yep.
But looking back at it now from that 40,000 foot view, I can understand why people were having their concerns and trying to pull me aside, so to speak. But in saying that, like as I said, like, you know, I joke about it now and I have joked about it with you. But like, I feel as though in that 3 month period, that's the longest I've been so close to my high energy, vibrating, passionate, motivating self. Like,
Yep.
yes, it was in extreme proportions and the behaviors that I was undertaking didn't exactly help my mentality at the time. Like, I'm fine. Like, I understand, like, the attention that I got was probably deserved.
Yep.
But in terms of like how I was showing up and how I was behaving, like I never felt more free in my life. Like, yes. Yeah. So that, I don't know if that answers your question, but
No,
yeah.
no. I think it does, because it leads me into the point of, you know, there are obviously aspects of that freedom that, you know, in being a king and in being in the world of masculine would not be deemed as sort of, you know, some of the most appropriate behaviors, you know, prostitution, you know, chasing other guys' girlfriends, you know, there's a respect element that sits in that. So there's clearly elements that I can see, you know, that they're probably trying to make up for break up a girlfriend or being oppressed by girls before, or saying, okay, I'm going to stand in a bit of a, you know, a tyrannical king space where I'm going to be dominant and I'm going to be patriarchal and I'm going to show how I can dominate over females, which is to do with some sort of oppression that you've had from females in your life before. So I can get and see that, right? Because that's what's showing up on that space going, hang on, I've been oppressed all this time. I've said I'm a feminine. I felt totally covered over. So how do I get out of that? I go the far extreme. I go, fuck it, I'm a dominant male, right? And I can go to any woman. And if I can't find a girlfriend, like I'll just go to prostitution or whatever else.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be very clear to all my listeners. Prostitution is a job. It's a beautiful job. And all the ladies that do that are beautiful, fantastic females that actually are doing that. Now, some chose to do that, some are falling into it. And this is not denigrating prostitution at all the females that do that, right? That's their job and that's their career. So before I get any comments coming against that and say I'm anti, I'm not. I'm just saying it's how the male shows up in that environment and what's playing out in the male's life that is actually either driving them into take on that, you know, to use that. And even when they're with the females, you know, the sex workers, how are they even showing up then? Are they showing up as being arseholes or tyrannical, or are they actually being humanitarian when they're actually doing it? So, yeah.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, really glad you said that. Really glad you said that.
To back onto that, because I thought that was just want to make sure that everyone was clear that, yeah. So back on that. So obviously those aspects that, you know, there's a shadow king was showing up on that side, but it feels like take that aside, put that aside, that you just something broke open and you're like there. But you're right, that can be scary to others because it goes against their own conditioning and their own self-belief, and it shows a mirror to them maybe about how they're not living their true freest life, which I think may be challenging for, you know, the close ones that were around you at the time.
Absolutely, mate. If you've hit the nail on the head right there, like, yeah, absolutely. It's and like I find it with myself too. Whenever I see someone, take a leap outside of their comfort zones, and yet the first thought is always judgment. And like as humans, like, you know, doesn't matter who you are, like we all judge. Like there's always judgment that passes through us. It's just what you do with it after that. But then it's like a form of projection. So looking back at it now from the space I'm in now, there was a lot of projection onto me about everyone else's fears and everyone else's like limiting beliefs about how to show up in the world and what was appropriate, what was not. Like I'm not defending my behavior. A lot of my behavior was wrong in that time, but just in general of how I was showing up, just in general. like it was probably a lot of their shit being projected onto me on top of genuine concern for me. So yeah, like absolutely, I completely hear you and yeah, respect that point.
So yeah, that cool. Appreciate that, man. So let's move a little bit forward. You've done the weekend.
Yep.
I I think I remember there was a time on that weekend we're in the group that you stood up in our group and you owned your shit. Stood up. I can't remember, you eyeball to eyeball with one of the other men in our group. And, I think, your eyes were down and your hands were different position, but, got you in that position of no, stand up, own the shit. And you did. And then there was a beautiful moment after that where, you got to look around and saw every man, and we saw you for the man that you are. And we all got to embrace. So that was, for me, one of the big memorable takeaway moments from the weekend. Just watching, as I said, without being condescending in introduction, that was the time where the boy that, part of that boy that turned up actually then walked out the man, because he got saw. For me, you got saw as the true man that you actually are, and now there's a journey that's gone on since then. Can you remember that experience?
I can. It's not a vivid experience, but absolutely, I do remember eyeballing. Yeah, and I remember like as soon as that moment happened, like as you said, my eyes were down. Like I didn't want to do it. Like there's a lot of fear there, and I was like, nah. But yeah, I remember being coached and encouraged by all the men around me, and to stand in your power and own it. Like there might be shame and guilt and all this under the surface, but stand in that, and like fix your posture, look the other man in the eye, and be seen by other men. This is where you're at. And whilst I was experiencing a lot of fear in that moment, as it's being relayed to me from you and other men, like it's what from a lot of time, like you don't see it from the 40,000 foot view. You just see what you're feeling. But yeah, and when I was told that, from yourself and other men, it was quite a courageous moment and things like that. Like, yes, it's nice to be acknowledged. But yeah, it makes you think twice about how you show up. It's like, yeah, it's really cool. I do remember that moment.
Yeah, that for me, the one, there's many takeaways from that weekend. Anyone can listen to any of the podcasts. I'll probably talk to most of them. But one of the things I take away from that is when I walk down the street, like I walk down, my eyes are up, like, and when people walk past me, I'm looking them at the eyes. 95% of the people I walk past will turn their head away or look down. Like they can't maintain that gaze. They can't stand in their power. They can't stand in their true self and just walk along, let alone actually see someone smiling at them and seeing them giving a nod and say, I see you. Like even as you're walking on the street, just being able to smile and just nod at somebody is actually, I see you and I'm not judging you. I just see you for who you are. And the amount of people that just can't accept that, like I find it's a really interesting almost study, like to the point I'm almost doing it to go, I really want to see you. I want you to see that I'm seeing you and it's okay. So head up, like let's see how many kings and queens are actually out there. It's interesting how many aren't.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely spot on. And yeah, it is interesting. Like I've never thought about it that deeply before, but yeah, that's really true. Yeah, because the amount of people, like I do, like now after that weekend, I do like to, regardless of what environment, walk down the street or walking in the cinemas or what. Like I love making eye contact. It's almost like a game. It's like, how long can I look into this person's eyes before they look away? So it's like, like I'm gonna win. But yeah, absolutely. And after that weekend, now I found it so much more courageous. Whereas before the weekend, if someone was walking down the street and looked me in the eye, I'd be like, "Fuck's wrong with that? Or what the fuck's wrong? Like, why are you looking at me? What did I do? Like, what's your problem? All this, masks." But yeah, like it's a beautiful experience. Like going through any workshop, like it's you have such a different experience, and the judgment falls away, and the sarcasm falls away, and you really see it for its true power. It's really nice.
Yeah, exactly. It's that whole thing you see in movies all the time. You know, someone looks at you and they go, "Who the fuck are you looking at?" Like, what are you looking at? It's like, hey, dude, chill out. You know what I'm saying? It's a beautiful person, man. I'm not here to fight you, man. Like, sorry if I'm actually just looking you in the eyeballs. Like, yeah, like, shit, what's going on in your life? Let's have a chat. Like, come on.
Yeah. You want to come to the next workshop, bro? Like,
That's right, exactly. Am I going to workshop for you? All right, so I am going to get into Mamba mentality, right? But we'll get to that eventually. But
yeah.
So somewhere along the line, no money in the bank. You know, you're on the weekend, you've landed back home again. You go, oh, that's pretty cool. And then you realize, hang on, there's a life for me out there. I need to go and discover and find it. I think from memory, it was you had less than $10 in your bank account. I'm pretty sure I saw that at some point in time.
Yeah.
So talk through that journey. Like, what does it actually look like? I mean, that's got to have its own fears and concerns, but I don't know, somewhat anticipation involved with it. So
yeah, absolutely. It was it started essentially as soon as I moved home after rehab, but like right before I did move, the fear was like, I don't want to get a job in my hometown where I was born, which is Glen Annis. And it was like, I don't want to get a job, get a bit of money and then move. And then like, that whole people pleaser, I don't want to upset a boss of like, only starting for a month or two and then bouncing. So it was like, all right, well, how do I get money to move? And it was like, oh, the only answer is to get a job before I move, but I didn't want to do that. So the fear was like, I was like, all right, let's just move with no money. And there was, my parents weren't overly supportive of that idea, understandably. But yeah, like I think I had 10 cents in my bank when I first got to Sunshine Coast, and luckily, my sister, one of my half sisters, actually lives here, has done for quite a fair few years with her family, and she took me in for about a month. So I was, helping out in any way I could, and none of those ways were rent. But yeah, so and then when I got into my first share house, I was quite lucky. I actually, the way that I earned my first money on the Sunshine Coast wasn't through Centrelink or a pub job, which what I used to do. I actually went down to Blazer's C&B men's meetup.
Yep.
And just to introduce myself, just to get a bit of a circle on the coast and meet some people. And one of the blokes there, he needed some stone shoveling in his backyard for $20 an hour. And I was like, done, I'm there. Like, yeah, so that's actually how I paid for my first food bill. My first rent was just shoveling stones for a mate I met at a men's meetup. And we're still mates today. Like, it's really cool.
So the reference to Blaze is Blaze Grinner, that Corey and I both dealt with. Blaze is one of the key leads and founders of Conscious Man Brotherhood, and Blaze was running the men's stand up in the Sunshine Coast. He still operates up there. I don't think he does the stand ups anymore up there. I think he's passed the baton on to another beautiful man up there, but certainly he's doing a lot of fantastic work through the Sunshine Coast with his own business. So big shout out to Blaze. We love him, and he's helped us all on our journey. So.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'd like to give him a shout out as well. Like, I remember the first hug I got from Blaze was during the anger exercise in Unleash the Beast. And just the amount of love, like, 30 seconds before he was like provoking me like he was everyone, trying to start a fight. And then 30 seconds later, he just dropped straight into love and gave me a big man hug. And and then that was one of the reasons why I moved to the Sunshine Coast. It was either Brisbane or Sunshine Coast. It was like, and the CMB and Blaze pulled me there, and I was working for Blaze at the time as an intern. And yeah, like I said to him, like, I've hired you as a coach and been on your retreat and XYZ. And, but yeah, like I said to him, like unknowingly to him, there was a father figure I really needed at that time. And he was that father figure at the time. So yeah, it really did touch my life in a big way.
Yeah, look, Blaze is a beautiful man. He's doing some amazing work with a lot of other men up in the Sunshine Coast, but also across Australia. So, very grateful for Blaze and what he's doing for men. But I think that's an interesting piece that you talked there about where we get called and how that actually works, right? So you had other options. You go to a stand-up, just put it out there to say, hey, I'm here. I'm showing up in all my kingdom. I just need a bit of cash, and all of a sudden the guy goes, yeah, come on over here. And I can put the burger on the table for you. And
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was so cool. It was really, really cool. Really, really grateful for that. Yeah, no, it just opened a lot of doors for me. And yeah, luckily I got contacted by a pub very soon after that. So, which I was grateful for because I'm not used to physical labor.
yeah.
uh, but yeah, so it's, yeah, it probably wouldn't have happened that way had I not, gone to the meetup. I probably would have been on Centrelink or X, Y, and Z, or had to move back home. So looking back at it now, I didn't realize how important it was for me going to meet up. But at the time, I just wanted to meet some people.
Yeah.
So the really important lesson there too, like even if you don't have an intention or agenda, like still show up. Like you don't know what can happen from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, absolutely spot on. You're so right on that. And it's interesting when you sit back and go, if you think through all what actually took place for you to actually land at that place at that time, like all the choices, the decisions that we feel that we made, as to whether we made them or not is, that's that whole, different view out there as to who helped us make those decisions to land, how much of that was, and I think part of it is, I feel that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the decision for you to pack up and move wasn't in the mind. There was something in your heart, in your intuition that's gone, hang on, there's something I have to actually go and do here. Maybe even coming from the experience you had that put you into rehab, but basically that whole, once you open up, then, you're actually really open up to your intuition. And the more we can start to learn to tap into, what our inner self and our true self is telling us, the power that comes out of the back of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely spot on. Like I knew from the get-go when I moved back home after rehab, I was like, this isn't where I'm meant to be. Like I want to go. And I was so, I was so, I guess, angry for a lot of reasons, but, yeah, like I knew, like I feel suppressed. I'm not meant to be here. I'm meant to go. And I felt bad saying that to mum and dad. So it's not like I wanted to run away from mum and dad and their home. It was just the fact that, like, I knew I had to be somewhere. And yeah, as you said, my soul knew. It was just going around in a few months, trying to determine what was necessary for that to happen. It was like, how can I pay for it? It's like, I don't have any money. Fuck it, just move anyway. Like,
yeah. No, I love that. And I think part of the reason why I've really closely aligned with your story, even though, the path of what got you there is different. You're basically a year older than my daughter. And, same thing. She went for a holiday in Cairns, had no money, but went for a holiday in Cairns. And then met a person up there who said, I can give you a job. Came back and said, fuck it, I'm moving to Cairns. No money. Like, no money. So I know where your parents are coming from. Like, I get that because the parent in me goes, fucking hell, like, here we go, right? But the fact is, she just knew that was the right thing for her. And then I've learned to trust that if that's her intuition and that's her calling, that I trust that that's the right thing for her. And yes, there are things I'll do to support her, but on the financial side. But her spiritual side and her now living that life, I think that's where, as parents, we have to learn to let go and to surrender. That there's a point where our kids actually have an age where they go, like, it's your call now. Like, go and do what you want to do. If you're called to do that, just know I'm always here. I'm here, physically, spiritually, mentally, financially. Like, we're always going to be here. You go, I can't hold you back because of my fears of what I didn't do in my life. And if I'm holding you back, is that because there's a sense of jealousy? Is there a sense of, why should you get the right to do that when I never did? And I hear that a bit as well. So I think as parents, the one thing I'm learning is, go and live your best life. And for me, as we have this conversation, I have a daughter. It's, works 2 days a week out on Fitzroy Island off Cairns, just, lapping up the sun, just doing stand-up paddleboard hire. And I have a son who's currently up to snow, basically, never been to snow before. He's now, a lift attendant and basically, snowboarding and jumping off jumps and just having, living his best life. And I'm like, that's good.
That is awesome.
So, and this isn't about sort of me, but it's just about, it's about, I think, men and dads, like, let go, like, trust that your kids have their own tuition. They've got their own journey. They've got their own paths to go on. We did our job by bringing you into the world and nurturing and supporting you. But dads, let go. Just surrender, but just be there for them. Be the safety net of the trapeze, whatever you want to call it, right? But just be there for them in case they fall. But don't have a crack at them if they fall. Just say, cool. Are you ready to hop back up? I'm still here. And I think that's what I'm really learning. And that's more the message that I would want to take out for other dads that may be out there listening to this.
Absolutely, mate. It's a beautiful message. It's a beautiful message.
So let's get into Mamba Mentality.
Yeah.
So you're up Sunshine Coast. I know that you're an avid lover of basketball, clearly a Lakers fan.
Yeah.
So for you, what does Mamba Mentality mean to you? Like, what's that? You're living to it. What is it?
Absolutely. Great question. What it means to me is to be it's also what it means to Kobe Bryant as well. So that's where I picked it up from. Just a little bit of context. And he lived through Mamba Mentality, and the way that he describes it is to be the best version of yourself every single day, to be better than you were yesterday in every aspect of your life. And he actually started kind of putting that persona on middle way through his career, where he went through a lot of adversity. And it was he wanted to separate his own life to the basketball life that he had. So he's like the Mamba Mentality. And it was at that time in his career where he just went up and up and up, and championships and MVPs, and that real beast mode, that real animal in him started coming out. So me gravitating to Kobe Bryant, like I always have, even before I got into men's work, really just took that on board, and kind of fly the flag for myself as well. And what it means for me, even though I didn't originally create it, what it means for me is just be as powerful as you can be. Like, really lean into it. Like, I've always kind of shied away from my power, shied away from, like, I'm quite a tall man. I've always never used my height when I played basketball. I was so timid, and like all my strengths, like, I don't really flex them in the most noble way possible. So what it means to me is just be as transparent as possible. Like, just be honest and tell the truth. Be passionate about what you do, and like love and care, and like it means so many things to me. What I think the reason why I guess I hold on to it a lot is because I still hold on to Kobe a lot, and the lessons and the wisdom that he dropped in. And I remember in a breathwork session, it's actually on Blazer's 3-day retreat. We're all sitting around ready to go in for breathwork, and Dan's leading it, and he's speaking into our intentions, and there's a lot of heartfelt and profound intentions and all that. And then I just put my hand up, like, I want to meet Kobe Bryant. I want to talk to Kobe Bryant. And it was quite interesting. And I eventually did, like, it was like in the last 5 minutes of the hour breath journey, like, he just dropped in and said, Corey, man, keep going. You're such a beast. Like, and I talked back, and he talked back. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? But yeah, he just said, man, like, and from that day on, I just realized that the Mamba mentality is like in me. Like, there's a Mamba. There's a part of me. It's a part of my soul. Like, there's that relentlessness. Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. I love that story because, for those, we've covered breathwork a few times with different people on the podcast. Until you've actually done it, there is that whole, there'll be the cynic. People go, oh, fuck off. Like, Kobe's going to turn up. On one, he's dead. And two, well, he's going to turn up to a Corey McCarthy in the middle of the Sunshine Coast, right? But the reality is the intention, and we don't know who's going to turn up. But the fact of whatever the intention is that you put out there into that breath work because we're all energy spirits that continue to exist before and after. It is absolutely feasible that Kobe Bryant would turn up to you because you're calling him in and you're asking him the question, and
Yep.
his spirit will come back and give you an answer. And so, as long as you're open and listening to it, then absolutely it will happen.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Remember, Blaze asked us to share our experience after, and I'm like, put my hand up, like, I don't believe what just happened, but it happened. Like, I don't believe it yet. It was, I was in disbelief, and that whole mentality of like, oh, that that's not real. Like that whole 2D mentality. Like he's dead. Like, um, yeah, and it was just really interesting. It was like, no, well, that's not what happened. What happened is Kobe Bryant spoke to you, and you spoke back to him. Like that is what you experienced, and yeah, so it was a learning moment for me just to embrace all these superstition things that do happen in men's work, and I guess that people that aren't in men's work might see that and look through it at a judgmental lens, which I've experienced myself, and I'm sure you've experienced as well. And
yep.
Yeah, it's which I understand. Like when I wasn't in men's work, I used to judge the shit out of it. I'm not going to lie. Like, but yeah, experiencing for myself, it's like my biggest gift right now. It's it's beautiful.
Look, I've gone from, and my wife will attest to this, right? The biggest, what I'd call is a carnivore cynic to effectively a vegetarian, just spiritualist, right? Just completely, yeah. And look, I still work through struggling with judgments and different things, particularly in the current society we're living in now, where there's a large push for medical procedures to be forced onto people. That's without maybe the right decision making processes and everything else, but all that. The non-judgment part is that just looking into each one's fear and understanding the conditioning, the fear that's coming from others, and having that compassion for them. It's not until you choose to look at things with an open mind and an open heart, and actually go, you know what, all this, it could be true. If it's true for that person, it's true for that person. I'm not here to say it's right or wrong. I'm not here to live in a world of duality. If it's true for them, then I love them and I support them, and that was true for them. And I think the more that we can get to that in this world, the more we can get to that space of less judgment, less accusation, less divisiveness, and more just understanding, compassion, openness, acceptance, across the board, then, I think humanity can head in a much better space than where we are today.
Absolutely. Like I couldn't agree more. It's like, as you said, like comes back to love or fear. And at the moment, the world's being driven by fear and separation and divide. And everyone, it's this could start a whole other conversation, Milvo. But but yeah, absolutely, you're right. Like humanity, like our true nature is to come together and to stick together and to connect with each other and to love each other. And when we do that, we'll, from a 40,000 foot view, we actually, take our power back as humanity and the ability to coexist. And and obviously there's a lot of politics involved in the middle of all that, but
Look, I look on leadership completely different these days. And for me, just learning also about energy and the fact that energy is everywhere, and that, basically energy attracts and so forth. And if people want the scientific views, go and find a magnet, go and find, all those elements. Like this is just how energy works, right? How the earth spins, how the moon's attached to us, right? It's pretty simple. If you want the scientific evidence, it's out there already.
Yeah.
But where our energy globally is being suppressed, and it's actually more heading towards what I'd feel is the negative energy through fear and scarcity. That's where leadership, and its energetic leadership, needs to stand on, so that the more men, the more women can stand in there and actually see through the fear and actually come from a level of compassion, a level from love, a level of positivity, just a level of support. We can actually help, lift up. There's plenty of, I can't remember it is, it's like plenty of ones where you see people standing there holding the earth, above their heads. But, as a collective group, I think there's an opportunity for more and more people to lean into that space and hold the love and hold that for everybody else. And then as more people open up their minds and their hearts, and you feel like, wake up. I don't like the word a woke person. I think that's Western spiritual crap. It's an ego-driven term. But the more people can actually, I suppose, move away from the ego and move back into their true self, which is just love and energy, then, the world has an opportunity to recover and return to, what it was years and years before we existed.
Absolutely. That is nail on the head. And I think like just acknowledging that is a possibility it can return to its natural state. I feel as though there's that, that fear-driven mentality of like, oh, we're screwed. Like there's no going back now. And like, if you say that and you believe that, that's locked. Like that's just how it is, but I feel as though, the first step to that, all that is just acknowledging that it is a possibility to return to its natural state. And then like, it's just kind of like a real closed mind that just like puts a little crack in it. And then you work on that crack and keep going. But,
but from my view, if you ever want to understand how insignificant you are in this world, go and check out a crocodile. Right? They have survived for millions of years before we got here. They'll survive when we're gone. Right? Yeah. Our lives, as much as we feel, I can change the world. Well, how are you going about doing that, right? Like what is it you're actually doing? Because, the reality is you can change you, but change you to just be, a kind, open-hearted, loving person. And if you just did that, then yes, you will support the world that already is. Everything else, birds, dogs, animals, plants, like they're already there, open, loving. They're not after anything. A tree just gives us oxygen. It doesn't ask for anything in return. Like it's not demanding. It's not judging us. Yeah. It's sitting there going, hey, dudes, I mean, there are some trees that are clearly judging us because we're knocking them down and everything else, but they just keep standing back up and growing again and saying, no, here you go, here's a bit more oxygen for you. We'll try and help you along. It would be good if you threw a favor our way and every now and then, but,
Absolutely. It's just, absolutely. Like giving without expectation, loving without expectation.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Matt. So, look, you've been very generous with your time and very open and generous with your story. And I've loved that. Again, I love doing these chats because I've even learned more about yourself and your journey. And so there's more context there. It hasn't changed, my open love for you as a beautiful man. And, from the day I met you, I've been privileged to have you as part of, my men's circle and my group. What I like is, I know that there is a group of men, irregardless of what was happening in my life, is effectively either a phone call or a message away and saying, dude, I just need you. Can you give me 10 minutes for a chat? And the amount of men out there now that would just say, yeah, sure, bro. Yeah, let me know. I'll drop anything. I'm here for you. And people need to understand that that's, when we talk about men's groups, this is what it's not a secret society against the world or anything else. It is a group of men who are willing to just show support, willing to be vulnerable, and willing to hold space for someone who just wants to be vulnerable. And I know you're that for me, and I truly appreciate that, and that's for sure.
Thank you, Milvo. I love you too, my brother, and it's a pleasure to walk this journey with you, man. And man, it was a really big honor to have you ask me to do this, and I really appreciate this, and I've really enjoyed watching you evolve as well from Unleash the Beast. And man, it feels like a lifetime ago. It's can't even relate to the people that we were before we walked in that room.
It'll be coming up 2 years soon, and yes, I found my voice, which is great, which I love. So before we actually wrap up, one thing I like to ask the men is, so for the men that are listening in here and the women who are listening in who have men in their lives, what's a message, what's a piece of wisdom that you felt that you've picked up that, may actually just help someone else who's sitting there going, I'm feeling a bit lost or I'm not sure where to go, what to do. What would you put out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you asking that question. So like when you're experiencing fear, in any situation, um, like for what's worked for me is to not wait for the fear to stop, which I used to always do. It's like when I'm not fearful, I'll do the thing. Um, is just to step in anyway, and you'll find that the fear doesn't even go away even when you do it. It's the fact of taking a step whilst experiencing fear, and it's the most liberating feeling. So just know that fear is okay. Love it. Don't shame it. Don't I'm not a man because I'm scared of doing this small thing or this big thing. That's just bullshit. But yeah, just really, really back yourself and know that, 100% of your darkest days where you didn't think you're going to make it, you've survived 100% of them. And yeah, I believe in you and you believe in you, and the rest is history.
Beautiful, man. I think that's an absolutely fantastic way to wrap up. I love how you've put that. So without any further, look, man, again, I just really want to appreciate you've been very generous with the time, full of gratitude. The fact that you said, accepted my invitation to come on to the podcast. I've really enjoyed having the chat with you today. I've enjoyed your openness and transparency. And yeah, I look forward to just continue watching Journey moving forward and us staying in touch. So take care. Have a beautiful day, and we'll chat again soon.
Sounds good, Milvo. Thank you very much for your time, my brother, and I hope you have a beautiful day. It's been a lot of fun catching up.
Awesome, man. Take care. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, Milvo.
So, folks, that was the beautiful Corey McCarthy, and what an amazing journey he's been on, and an amazing story. And as I said, for the world moving ahead, to have someone of, again, without being condescending, Corey's beautiful age of 25, I see him as one of our future leaders in all spaces in men's work. And leadership's not about, am I running a corporate organization, or am I, earning $1 million? It's got nothing to do with that. It's mindset, it's attitude, it's the love and support, and the willingness to, be vulnerable and actually hold other men and hold other people in his hands, which he does. So again, thanks, Corey. It was an awesome chat, man. So that's the wrap for episode 33 of the Unearthed Man podcast. As you know, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. So that's it for me. Much love and peace. Milvo.